Hi everyone, I'm Margie O'Brien. Welcome to this Capital Spotlight. They say that not all learning happens in a classroom, or in this case, in the House chamber. Representative Karen Alzate and Leonela Felix join me. I can't wait to hear about this adventure that took you outside the business and the building here, but really gained you such insight into being legislative leaders. So where were you? Paint the picture for us. Where did you go?
Yeah, so my colleague, my sister here, we went to Brussels in Belgium, and we really connected with some amazing leaders from pretty much all over the world. And we had a full week of really learning what it's like to be an inclusive leader. We had a couple Americans, so a lot of our answers were very similar. A lot of the Europeans were answers that I don't know that we ever thought of, just because, you know, the way Europe is set up. But we definitely learned so much outside of just Rhode Island, but also the United States. How people view us, how we view them, and also what are some policies that we might think don't benefit us or we don't believe are helpful to us in our communities or our country, but they're actually highlighted in their countries.
And who was this through? What organization?
So it was the German Marshall Fund, and they have several different programs that they do to be able to engage with different types of leaders, different mechanisms, but one of them is the Transatlantic Inclusion Leadership Network, and that was the one that we got selected to, so we were the only two in Rhode Island to get selected to be able to go to this program, and it's really about bridging relationship between leaders of the United States and across the Atlantic, and that way being able to really learn, like my colleague said, in terms of what is it that they're going through and how can we help, how can we benefit, how can we really open our eyes to the views of another world. So for one example, we had colleagues from Georgia, the country Georgia, and really learning about their struggle and what they're doing in terms of trying to protect their rights in terms of the legislation that just passed. And it was really impactful to see the passion and the advocacy that they had for their countries. And it was just such a wonderful experience, but also very human. Allowing us to center our humanity, our understanding that we're not just leaders, we're also human beings that need time to recoup. So being able to see that and recognize that and offer us opportunities to be able to engage as just people and have a good time while also learning. I mean, I've done several programs, and I have to say that this was the highlight.
That's fantastic. So you said something earlier. You found out how people perceive us as Americans. How do they?
I think it's the same thing that we think about in our countries, right? They think we're rich and that we have, you know, we all drive cars and that we're all fat, which was like the funny one because like we have a lot of food, people eat or whatever. But I think it was more so like it was at the same time that in the U.S. Congress was voting on the aid package, and so they, you know, while on one end they were saying we have all this money and they were really hoping that this package was going to pass, we also had to make sure to let them know, like, while we supported the package and we're very happy that our delegation was able to vote for the help, we are not made out of money. And so I think that was one of the biggest things that I, you know, had side conversations with some of the other leaders was, you know, yes, while the U.S. is a global leader and we are so blessed to be Americans, we have our struggles as well. And, you know, we added another layer. We are not only presented ourselves as Americans, but, you know, myself as a Colombian American and Rep. Felix as a Dominican American. And so, you know, trying to have them understand what that means, because for them, you know, we had colleagues from Albania, and one of the questions was, you know, how do you identify? And she's just like, I'm Albanian, and 95% of the country is Albanian. Armenia as well.
So do they feel like it's a bonus that you're not just checking one box American, that you are a Dominican American, that you're bringing something added to the table?
Yeah, that's the impression that I got in terms of having these conversations, because again, going back to the discussion about ethnicity and such, for some, it wasn't something that they ever thought about. It wasn't something that they ever had to contemplate or fill out in a form. So to be able to see it and recognize like the difference in which we act, and then also in terms of the diversity that we brought. For many, it was, there's young elected women in the United States, right? But then also that caveat of, okay, but you're Colombian also descendant and you're Dominican descendant, and how does that play in terms of representing your community? So it was
I bet
just
that
like,
was
yeah.
a great conversation.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So I know that as legislators, you're always looking to other states to see what they do, so you're not recreating the wheel here in Rhode Island. How do you take that a step further to see what other countries are doing to take that knowledge back here for your own role?
Yeah, I think in terms of, we've been having discussions in terms of how can we exactly do that? How can we share resources to be able to collaborate more inclusively, right? Not just thinking about Massachusetts or Connecticut or whomever is right around us. It's really thinking globally. What is London doing in terms of leave? What is, I don't know, Germany doing in terms of healthcare? And really sharing those resources to be able to like bring back those policies and see, yes, they might be different countries, but people are people, and how can we support them? So it's really, I'm really excited to be able to grab those learning experiences and those resources, because now we have a slew of people that we can call and say, hey, I heard about this issue happening in your community. Can you share more? And so maybe
You
I
have
can
transatlantic friends now.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have a topic that surprised people? Did you ever talk about the homelessness or the housing crisis that we're experiencing here? Do other countries face that?
One thing I think was, I wasn't expecting it, but they asked a lot about our immigration. A lot of the siloed conversations, because like I've said, and I'm very open about the fact that my dad was deported, they didn't fully understand that and what that meant for someone like me who is a first gen, because that's not particularly something that everybody is grasping with around the world. While we did have colleagues that do come from countries where they are facing a lot of immigration issues, it was the questions of like, what are you guys doing? How can we be helpful? And how does it differ from us? But also just the history of Belgium and them being colonizers and figuring out, how can they be more helpful? And also just, they host the European Union, the Parliament. And so just learning about that, for them, they were like, they know the history of the U.S., but it was interesting to have them ask questions about immigrations in terms of like, what can we do at the state level versus, at the national level.
Yeah, and I think another thing that was really interesting in terms of conversation, we got the opportunity to visit NATO and do a tour and really learn in terms of the important. In the United States, we take it for granted. Oh, NATO, we don't need it. This is just something on the back burner. And you see data in terms of the number of people that think that we should be or shouldn't be in NATO and such. But the importance that they play in the many of the colleagues that we've met, the importance that NATO is to their country was really impressive, and those conversations really enlightened me to want to learn more about what is it that they do and how can they do things better. So I'm really excited also about that in terms of how can we bring back that information, not just to think about ourselves here in the United States, but really looking at the big picture of, it impacts us all.
Well, I can hear the excitement. I also see the passion in your faces. So you would highly recommend this to maybe some of your brothers and sisters here in the legislature?
Oh, absolutely.
It was life-changing. Mm-hmm. It really, connected us to ourselves. I believe that it made myself and Rep. Felix a stronger representation in our community, but also even in our own personal relationship. And also just getting out of Rhode Island, because, we're such a small state, but seeing that the way the world views us is so different than the way that we have seen it both in Colombia and in Dominican Republic, right? And so it was one of the best experiences I think I've ever have had.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing your story. And for everyone at home, thank you for tuning in to this Capitol Spotlight. I'm Margie O'Brien with Capitol TV.